Hello and welcome to the latest Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Poz, with the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, the doctor, Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. As we're recording this, there seems to be a lot of consternation in the US about the weather. So hopefully everything will turn out all right for everyone. Already a number of wrestling show cancellations, which we'll get to hopefully towards the end of the show.
So, really interesting thing to start off on, and that's Real American Freestyle. What is going on? Seems like they're doing pretty good, maybe hitting a little bit of a hot streak here.
Yeah, so REF tweeted 5 shows in, Real American Freestyle has become a top subscription driver for Fox Nation, with REF 5 marking the platform's biggest day of subscriber growth in more than a year. Partnerships don't usually move this quickly. So they renewed, I don't think it was specific, but for a few years, the partnership between REF and Fox Nation. So obviously that's a good thing. Just some questions about it, because it is a smaller platform in the, of course, in the gigantic Fox universe. I will, pat myself on the back if you're just listening on audio, because I guessed correctly that if it wasn't going to be on this Fox platform, I would eat my hat.
Hmm.
So they don't give a lot of numbers in terms of how many subscribers there are on this platform, but I think last time, maybe a year ago, they said 2.5 million. So let's assume about 3 million subscribers. So it's just questions about, is Fox Nation overpaying to sort of build some momentum on the sports side? Um, the broadcast quality is great. So how much is REF paying for that? The venues are professional venues. They're booking known UFC talents many times, so they command a decent booking fee. So I'm just wondering, I have no idea. They already might be profitable, but I'm wondering, like, what's the burn rate if they're not, because they're spending a lot of money, and I'm not sure how much is coming back in terms of a deal like this. But obviously, it's going well. They're establishing themselves well.
Fox loves them apparently, and Fox loves Eric Bischoff, who's on some of their programming, so they're loving him.
Yeah, that's on Fox. What is it? Fox Nation, Fox
Yep.
News. Regular there. He has now bringing the other partners along. So some corporate synergy.
You gotta love it. RAF is moving on up. Now, I don't know about this other company I'm about to name, if what they're doing or where they're going. What's going on with WoW?
So just noting this, as I'm probably the only one in the world tracking such things. But in 2023, this all comes from backstage.com, where they'll have occasional calls for talent, assuming mostly newer talent because they're offering to pay. So 2023, they listed $600 to $4,000 per event plus royalties, a rate of $4,000 to $6,000 a month, total pay between $12,000 and $18,000 for 3 months' work. Not bad, especially for people that are just starting out. Then 2024, they had listed $4,000 to $6,000 a month, so same rate, total pay between 16 and 24,000 for an estimate of 4 months of work. So a little bit extra commitment, and some more money corresponding with that too. Then at the end of the year here, they just listed $600 flat rate, no duration provided. Training commences the first quarter of 2026, shoots in spring 2026 in Florida. Production continues annually. So, it's a little bit murky in terms of exactly payments and so on, but it just seems to read that, maybe they're realizing they can get new talent a lot cheaper than they were willing to pay before. And I'm curious to see how that would change the yield of people applying.
Wow. Okay. Interesting there. Now, as far as TNA wrestling is concerned, it seems like there's a bit of news, just as far as obviously TNA on AMC, the debut, but also your longtime close personal friend David Bix had something to say about it as well, as far as just what's going on with AMC.
Yeah, it took me a little while to come across this article from our friends at SE Scoops. Um, just a snippet, and you can go out and seek out the full article. There are other questions that this raises. Does the lack of messaging about the finances of the AMC deal and the difficulty retaining talent indicate that the finances of the deal are on the more bleak side, like a straight up ad revenue split with no other consideration included? So that kind of blew my mind. Um, and it was purely speculative, so I'm not confirming this information at all. However, somebody else who shall remain nameless at the moment, because if they do confirm it, assuming as they'd like, they will put out a story. But one of my other contacts, who is a reporter covering this industry and TNA generally pretty closely, had seemed to confirm that from what they're hearing, this is a ad revenue split deal as well, which is pretty shocking if it's true. Again, totally speculative right now, because we had heard that TNA was seeking $10 million, Sean.
Wow, very interesting. I think we should come back to TNA and maybe talk a little bit more just about the ratings, but let's welcome in Ash. What's going on? Ash Brown, how you doing?
Yeah, good. How you going?
Hi,
Very
Ash.
good.
Good to connect with you on here. Thanks for joining us on what I believe, if my math is correct, the 23rd, whereas it's the 22nd over here. So through the miracle of time and space.
We could see the future over here, and it's not great, but that's okay.
True. I know my sister and brother-in-law used to live in Australia. I always would get confused when the birthdays were. I would always be wrong. It was always a day off. Yes. Crazy.
Yeah. The Americans flipped the way months and dates work and all sorts of things, but that's fine. We'll live with that. So it is hard when you're doing software development, though.
Oh, yes. I could see that being a problem for sure. So obviously Ash Brown is here. He's a bit of a, I guess, self-admitted stat nerd, right? You're a stat wizard, if you will.
I certainly wouldn't say I'm a wizard, but I would definitely say that I love the business of wrestling, the actual business of wrestling, and I also really my real job is I'm a founder of a company that does strategy, execution, and software, and various other tools for small to medium businesses. That's my day job, and I'm always big believer of stats don't really lie, but you can manipulate stats to make things work. But when things don't have any empirical data behind it, and it's facts, opinions delivered as facts, I always get a bit sort of that doesn't feel right.
So just as far as you and like your background, everything, you kind of were saying obviously what you do, but rewinding back though, where did you grow up? Obviously, Australia. When did you discover wrestling? Just give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah. So when I was, I think it was 8 or 9, I think I first saw WrestleMania 5 on VHS, and we were all talking about it at primary school, which is your elementary school, and then so I went to the local video store, and we weren't really well off financially, but we had a video recorder, but we had a black and white TV. So the first time I ever saw WrestleMania, well, the first thing I ever saw was WrestleMania 5, the Mega Powers explode, and I saw it in black and white because that's what I had, and it was amazing. And I just went, okay, this is I love this stuff. Never thought I would get into it like an actual wrestler or anything, but I just love the entertainment. I love the spectacle of it. I love the fact you can turn your brain off and just enjoy the pageantry and everything about it. So I followed it pretty much from sort of 89, 90 all the way through to sort of, I've been to now, obviously I went to WrestleMania 41, which was a bit, but I've been to 5 WrestleManias. We've gone to events here in Australia. Yeah, I was just my wife and I. It's sort of one of those things that I'm lucky I've got a wife that loves it as well. And it's definitely. Ironically, I've actually got the Survivor Series 1990 running on from the WWE vault as I work. So yeah, I love it.
With you, when you're kind of doing the stats wise, whatever, but when did you kind of have an interest in like the business side of wrestling? Like you're a fan, but when did you start thinking of the other aspect of it, the business end of things?
I reckon during the Monday Night Wars, I think it really sparked it up. It's just like, okay, well, what are these contracts? What are favored nations contracts? What are these TV deals that they're doing? Why does the AOL merger matter to the business of for Turner, for WCW? Why is WWF going public? What's the advantages and disadvantages? So it's actually kind of one of those really. Why is ECW, as I were in ECW, to going out of business? Well, you don't pay anyone, and that probably doesn't help, and you don't pay your bills. That won't help either. But yeah, so and I'm the same with basketball as well. Like I love understanding the salary cap, and I'm a big NBA fan, as you can probably tell as well. That I love understanding the salary cap and how trades work, and how the values, the trade value in a certain percentage, that type of stuff. So I always one of those people that likes to play with Lego. Is probably the best way to explain it, where you like to build something, then you like to pull it apart and understand how it all goes back together.
Gotcha. So it did interesting, like recently even, but when did you kind of notice or come across Dave Meltzer, who's obviously kind of been the voice of covering wrestling for many, many decades?
Yeah, I think for a long time. To be fair, I actually subscribed about 10 years ago to the newsletter. Then sort of once I couldn't get past all the spelling mistakes and grammar issues, I probably went, okay, probably I'll keep my $13 or Australians about 16. So you sort of understand the sort of wrestling media. I remember actually, to be fair, I actually remember the first time I went on a wrestling website was the night after WrestleMania 14, and it said the X-Pac Sean Waltman come. And I remember reading it on almost like this GeoCities website. I can't remember which website it was that spoiled it, and so it was really interesting. But yeah, the wrestling media stuff really interests me as well, because I feel that, it's just probably not as impactful or not impactful. Impactful is the wrong word. It's probably not as sort of transparent as it needs to be about its bias. And definitely with someone like Meltzer, I noticed over the last sort of 10 years that his bias. I used to actually, to be fair, how I really learned from him was when I used to listen to live audio wrestling with from the Canadian show with Agnew and Pollock. And I can't remember who the other guy, Lebowski or whatever his name was. So that was, and I used to think, this guy's actually quite intelligent. He used to absolutely crap on TNA quite a bit, but he was quite intelligent. And I found him to be an excellent historian. I think he's a great historian, but I think at the moment, I think there's definitely, I was reading some of the stuff and went, there's a bit of bias here.
As far as like pro AEW, pro CMLL, or...
Yeah. There's definitely what I find probably more in how do I put it? I don't see any other sport or entertainment body or genre have one person's opinion really bleed out through the bias of the wrestling media or any other media. So there's not like, you don't see like in NBA, like Stephen A he might have an opinion, but he doesn't necessarily control the narrative to all these other writers, from SI to Bleach Report, all that sort of stuff. And what you notice, with Meltzer's reporting is generally like I'll listen to the Cultaholic podcast and those guys, because I actually quite like them. But then like What Culture and those sort of guys, and then everyone's sort of aggregating what he's reporting as opinion as fact, and then what happens is it's just this snowball effect that goes across the industry, which kind of removes the credibility of an entire industry when you kind of do want some information, but it's like, well, where is the information coming from? Is it valuable? What the bias is, which is probably media overall at the moment anyway, I suppose.
Well, you're blocked, right? You won't be able to see what he's putting out there now.
Yeah, well, yeah, see, he blocked me once I, apparently doesn't like facts.
Now, as far as like, obviously some of the facts and stuff, the fact of the matter is, though, and kind of obviously going in a little bit of a different direction here, though, is a lot of the wrestling companies that probably should have been talking about the death of Hulk Hogan did not, including AEW, right? I mean, some disrespect there for the Hulkster.
Yeah, look, regardless of his personal challenges, it's probably the best way of putting it, you can't sort of take away the fact of what he did for the industry. You'd think that, yeah, that's the thing. Like, you can't just, I mean, there's certain things that are happening now in AEW where Trey Miguel is not allowed for posting stuff, and then you can see stuff from the Young Bucks from PWG where they're calling people, super F word and that type of stuff. So it's don't get me wrong, contradictions are everywhere. That's just the way the world is. Just like, it's, pay homage. Weirdly, I find the Owen Hart stuff with AEW quite distasteful, but that's a whole thing for another day.
I just feel like crazy to not mention him. Like, I don't even know if a lot of these companies would even exist today if it wasn't for the Hulkster. You know what I mean?
Yeah, take away the fact that he was probably not exactly the human being that he needed to be. But at the end of the day, you've got to look at it and go, well, it is the founding father of wrestling. If you go back to the founding fathers of any country, state, whatever, they probably weren't exactly the people you want them to be, based off today's morals and points of view. But you've got to sort of, sadly, tip. You got to, not sadly, but you got to tip your hat to them. So, now, especially acknowledge them, especially if they pass.
Let's hand it back over to Lavie Legend here. He's got a bunch of questions for you.
So, Ash, I came across, of course, your wonderful analysis, which is the Wrestling Media Conversion TV to Pay-Per-View Loyalty Index. So take your time, walk us through that. What were the findings? What surprised you and what concerned you?
Well, I think probably the interesting thing was that I sat there and for a while I sat there and watched various content, and I couldn't sort of get my head around the fact how a company would have 130,000 buys but only have 450,000 or 500,000 viewers. And I was sitting there going, that's an incredible conversion rate. I'm in the software world, right? So to have that sort of level of conversion almost puts you on the mega unicorn status if you're doing that, like if you're doing a trial, because effectively if you look at the TV as trial and then paying as the conversion, that's an incredible number that they're pulling off. And that's why I thought it doesn't really pass the sniff test. And then when I started looking, all the data was literally was from one person writing in the Observer. I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Like, there's no, like most things with AEW, like the max numbers and that type of stuff. There's nothing really, tangible that you could actually. The only thing that's tangible is the gates and the weekly ratings. And I looked at it and went, well, let me think about this and go back to sort of not the golden era of the WWE or WWF or NWA or anything, but let's go back to sort of that attitude era, and when people were really buying and watching and buying. And then when I started doing the stats, and it's very simple to get that data. It's not that difficult. And once I started going, your WCW in 1998 was averaging 4.5 million viewers, and they were getting 400,000 buys on average. And that's 8.8%, and that was sort of 98, and that was kind of a bit sketchy at that point, but it's still on the curve. And then WWF at 97 is doing 2.4 million, 275,000. That's 11.5%. I'm like, well, that's apparently the boom period that we all measure the greatness of wrestling to, or when we measure the ratings against. And then when I started looking and going, well, how can AEW go, on average 580,000 viewers on Dynamite every week and get 138,000 buys. and it just did, and which made 23%. So you're telling me nearly a quarter of their audience is buying the pay-per-view in a world where also the other thing that I sort of really looked at was it's a lot easier to illegally stream these days than it was to steal cable, especially the way it is now. So yeah, it just didn't pass the sniff test. And when something doesn't pass the sniff test, I went, okay, well, I'll go back all the public accessible data and put it into the sort of that AI algorithm and turn around and go, okay, can you punch this out in a really digestible way? And it did. And, it pissed some people off, and some people said, "Oh, you're anti-AEW," which actually is not actually the case. It's actually I'm anti-idiotic bias reporting.
Really fascinating. What might be something interesting to consider as you continue to build this out? I feel like not to justify the numbers that are reported, but it might give some more clarity to it. Whereas back in the mid 90s into the early 2000s, of course, it was much more of a mainstream product in terms of millions of viewers, as we know. And now it's so much lower, under a million. I'd be curious to see what the percentages look like if you were to say in that short period that ECW aired on TNN and compare the ECW buy rates. And another period that might be interesting in its semi-cousin. For us, as its cousin. For other people, it's a totally different tree. But UFC, when it was on USA with The Ultimate Fighter, to see the percentage of buy rates there, because it did tremendous, right? I think it was like a couple million, which was great. But the buy rates went up, right, to over 200,000, especially if it was a big fight. So there might be something there where I don't think you would see the AEW numbers, like especially the peak where it's 23%, right? The affinity seems to be going down, but I think you may see it closer to your number from 2022, 2023, around 15%, where you have those passionate fans.
My gut feel is it's somewhere between 10 and 15%. No doubt about that. I firmly believe, because they are a rabid fan base. There's no doubt there. I think with the UFC one, I think one of the issues, I looked at the UFC and I was going to measure the UFC numbers, because a few people actually come back to me and said, "Oh, but trust me, the crazies came out," and there was some people that jumped on and said, "Yep, this makes all." To be fair, it was probably 80%, 80 to 20, where people were like, some people called me a loser. One guy said, "Oh, look, I learned how to use a spreadsheet," and then I looked at his profile and went, "Okay, don't worry about it." and the best thing is never engage in the crazies. But with the UFC stuff, the reason I never do that is because UFC is probably more of a communal thing as well. So there's a lot of bars and pubs in Australia now that will buy UFC, and people will go to a bar and watch it as a communal event. Wrestling events tend to be far more sort of, I'll watch it with maybe a friend or two in my living room, versus I'll go to the local bar to have a few drinks and watch Aldo versus McGregor. Do you know what I mean? So that's why I looked at it. I looked at that and went, because that would be, because there's a skew in the numbers there, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, that definitely. And I was curious about the crazies that came after you. Thankfully, we have enough people that listen and follow. At least for me, John's higher profile, but for me, like it's kind of rare, and I'm just like have to remind myself, don't do this, just block them, whatever. Just once in a while, certain tweets. I think I made like a joke about Enochiism in New Japan, and it like set people off. And like for a while, it's interesting because it was like just so quote unquote popular, but like what people were saying was like so weird that I was just like, I can't take this anymore.
I just sit there and go, it's words. I couldn't care less. Like it's people have got their opinions, and I'm not going to change their opinions. And that's what this was all about. This is not about me changing their opinions. Just offering, okay, let's just question the numbers. And And it was never actually an anti-AEW thing, because I actually think competition is fantastic for any business. You shouldn't have, one dominant brand in anything. And to have, AEW, and AEW at its peak between sort of, those punk years, in all honesty, was probably its peak, was incredible viewing. And it's sort of kind of been proven since then that was its peak, business wise, ratings wise, everything. But yeah, some people only read what they want to read, and they come after you. I think someone, called me virgin and loser and all this. I was like, okay, cool, whatever. That's whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, yeah, I legitimately don't care. It's a phone. People make comments. It's easy to make comments. Don't worry about it. Like, it's not real. I'm not worried about that stuff.
Yeah, what's interesting is since I changed my handles to include doctor, because I did get my doctorate, it seems to be a point that people want to make fun of if they're going to attack me, which is weird. Like,
just let it roll. Don't worry about it. I've never worried about what people think. It's just like, everyone's got opinions. It is what it is, and it's a lot easier to let your opinions be heard anonymously on the internet. And for some reason there's this tribalism and this is probably going back to the Meltzer thing as well. He drives a lot of that tribalism, and it drives a lot of that sort of crazy behavior that's sort of there, like the complete lack of sort of awareness, or maybe he is completely aware of driving. AEW and WWE could do exactly the same thing, and AEW will be praised and WWE will be lambasted. So, it is what it is.
So in one of your tweets, you had said you were considering doing some more old wrestling verse today. So what are you thinking about next? And maybe if you have a few things in mind, we could help push you in something that we want you to do.
Yeah. There's some things like merch numbers, actual like ratings to like measuring ratings, stadium numbers, attendance numbers, that and pay-per-view buys, that type of stuff, and then understanding sort of is the industry, like everyone, like you listen to Cornette, who I do like listening to Cornette. It's a weird, like, and actually that was something people go, I tagged bad faith people. And I went, well, no, I didn't tag just those guys for that reason. I just, on that, I tagged them because they're the only ones that would actually probably look at it objectively. Where if you tag, Fight for or whatever else, and suddenly you got all these crazies just coming after you saying, you're doing this. So there was a reason why I did that, and that was the reason. But going back, that just understanding the actual business of the wrestling and where it actually is metrics wise, from readily available metrics, to understand, where are we going? Where is it healthier than we actually think? I think one of the interesting things is, which I haven't even touched on yet, which I wouldn't mind touching on, is sort of the social media impact as well, like, YouTube views, that type of stuff, and, calculating sort of the difference, the YouTube views per week to attendance and ratings and those type of things. It'd be really interesting to understand those tricks, because I think that's huge.
It sounds really interesting. And if there was a way to, like, have all these things talking to each other, where you have the YouTube and the social media engagement, and if there is television where together, if it could tell a story and you can track the business that way.
Yeah, I used to like the Brandon Thurston stuff for quite a while. Then you sort of become just obsessed with the Vince McMahon stuff, and I went, okay, cool. Well, that's sort of gone the way. You can't, and this is probably going back to my sort of rant about wrestling media a little bit, is it just feels like that there's a lot of people that have just got complete and utter agendas that they want to do X, Y. Like, I used to listen to John Pollock and Wei Ting quite a lot back in early days, and now I can't listen to it because it's just very biased towards. He always was biased towards Japanese wrestling, but biased towards AEW and that sort of stuff. It's like, come on, can we just have like a balanced approach to wrestling? If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. Like, just call it as it is. Do you know? Do we have to go down rabbit holes? So,
as John knows, my thing is, if you announce a sellout, I understand if you killed some seats for a screen or whatever, but you can't take a 20,000 seat venue, cut it down to 4,500, and then call it a sellout, especially if you're going to expand the seats if you sell more. That's my hill. I fought with David Penzer about it.
No, well, you're 100% true. You could have a sellout in your backyard and have 10 people in there listening to you do karaoke and say it's a sellout. Vastly different to being Taylor Swift selling at MetLife. So,
yes. Let me turn over to John.
Now, Ash, where could everybody find you on social media? Where can everybody see you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, really, to be honest, under Real Free Brownie. I post things every now and again. I'm not a prolific poster on Twitter, but I just go in there, and I think I even said to people, like, I'm not looking to make a career or anything out of. I think I saw something interesting. I thought I'd post it, and then somehow it became a thing. So I think it was viewed by over 250,000 times or something. It was incredible. So it rattled enough cages because Meltzer blocked me. Sean Ross Sapp actually agreed with it, which was actually interesting. So yeah, it was cool.
Oh, really? Agreed?
There was something he agreed that, and then there was a couple other people that were in the tweet thing. It was just like something that he was arguing with someone, and it was more in the affair I was doing. So I didn't pay much attention, to be fair.
That is kind of interesting with the AEW pay-per-views, not to get back on that tangent, but I'm just curious, where is that number even available? Or is it even available anywhere as far as getting that number for the pay-per-views?
Yeah, so what I did was I used AI tools to scrape the internet for any reference points on anything that's been reported on AEW pay-per-view buys. And to be honest, the only real data that was out there was Meltzer's Observer newsletter, and it was always approximate. And one thing I noticed, one thing I really did notice was it was always a week after the pay-per-view. So like World's End, and it would say, "Oh, the numbers are coming in strong." You might as well say "great" 27 times like Tony does, but the numbers are coming in strong, and they're around 130, but you never follow up. There's never been a follow-up from those. They go, actually, the numbers come in, it was like 68,000 or 98,000. So it was always approximates. That was one thing that sort of really piqued my interest. It was never like, AEW or WWE. And now, more than WWE would announce a gate and go, okay, we had $1.25 million come through the gate, blah, blah, blah. You can never find that type of stuff. So you're kind of running a bit blind, and you're just pulling off really observer numbers. And some people actually brought up how he gets his numbers is generally for Google Trends, which is probably even more concerning. So he's got a formula that calculates the Google Trends of the day and that sort of stuff. So I don't understand how that works. So that's a guesstimation if I've ever seen one.
But does it say where he's getting the number for the pay-per-view?
No. That's the thing. It's that's a big thing about if you go through all the data, actually, it always says approximate buy rates for World's End is X approximate thing, and then that's pretty much where it stops. And that's why it really piqued my interest. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. If you go through or have a look at all the buy rates of AEW pay-per-views of the last 3-4 years, it's all those numbers have come from the Observer.
But I'm just curious where he's getting it from. You know what I mean? Like, where's he? Is Tony giving him that number?
Yeah, well, that's probably the $6 million question, isn't it? So I've got no idea, and that's why I thought I'd question, because it never felt right. It never felt right. I probably agree. What was brought up before, like between the 10 to 15%, probably smells right. But if you're doing, I had a few people say, "Oh, well, you're not including the worldwide numbers." Well, it the worldwide number for the pay-per-view buys. So it actually kind of works out in the other way's favor, to be honest. So it's sort of just, but I've measured it all the same way. So it's not like I've measured one differently and one another. I've measured everything with just one set of rules.
It is kind of fascinating to think like, okay, like 30%, 25% of the fan base is ordering the pay-per-views that watch the TV. That is seemed like you said, even Attitude Era would have been way higher, but it was 8% or whatever it is. So that does seem kind of out of whack. Like it almost not accurate to me. Like that can't be.
Yeah, I mean, and look at the 2024 number. Probably, if you have a look at the real peak, say 2021, they were averaging 890,000 for the Dynamite, and they were getting, according to Meltzer's reporting, it was 165,000 average buy rate, which is 18%.
A little high.
Now that was the punk days, so things were probably business was a bit higher at that point. Was it Punk was 21, 22, might have been 22, but yeah, so it was, but it just never really passed, the test of sort of when you shake the tree and go, is this number actually correct?
Yeah, there's a lot of like funky numbers out there. Like we always have on Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, and we asked him about the max numbers, and he said whatever was reported was definitely way less and not accurate. So I kind of believe him over anybody else too. So, and I know he reports some of the AEW pay-per-views, but it says this is from Wrestling Observer. So
yeah, that was my sort of what kicked it off. It's like everyone's reporting off one person who's got a natural bias towards this company's number, and he's reporting it as fact, but there's always a prox, and there's never any follow-up of those numbers. And in this day and age, it's pretty easy to shake the tree and find out if these numbers are correct. And then max numbers, there's no way in the world those max numbers are correct, because if they were doing $500,000, which was 500,000 viewers a week, which was reported pretty flippantly by an actual reporter, then they'd be touting that.
Of course.
WBD and also AEW be setting up press releases every week, flaunting over 1 million viewers and all that sort of stuff. But so, I just don't buy that.
Ash, gotta say thank you again for hopping on here. You're in the future. We're going back to the future, but thank you. Appreciate you all the time tonight.
No worries. Thanks very much, and I'm glad to jump on and have a chat about a little spreadsheet I did once.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks Ash.
So much.
See you guys. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great night. All right, Lavie, let's go back to the future here. Let's go back to TNA, because I wanted to ask you about the ratings. I guess they came in, I know, falsely reported by some site, correctly reported by the other. What's the number, and what was your guess? Did you guess correctly?
Yeah, it's funny when that 95,000 number came out. Brandon, who we love his work, of course. Anyone in the public sphere, there's different ways of analyzing that and criticism. He made a mistake. He shared it, and like people went crazy. The 95,000. All the news sites reported it. He tried to get ahead of it. In terms of just posting. I'm not sure how many people updated that immediately, because it was a good number to reach for. So it's good. I think I actually had retweeted, or it disappeared because he changed it very fast. So I was actually kind of celebrating being right for a moment. I was like, yeah, I said 100. But then for the health of the business, it's good that it came in 173. I think that's pretty good. As we talked about, it would have been very hard to get 300, 400,000 when you look at the AEW numbers, right? Like, how many? I know there's, the tribalism where there's only TNA fans, but how many are there? And it's really, for the most part, drawing from the same base. And every time, it goes to a lower rung, you're going to cut a certain amount unless there's something very, very special. If we ever get them, I'm very curious about the quarter hours, because
it seems like they went away.
Yeah, and of the analysis that I had seen, it was kind of like spot on. Like, you saw AJ Styles' symbol, but then no music for a while.
Yep.
And you saw whatever celebrities or whomever in the crowd, but they had them in the places where there's just a ton of empty seats. For the first few minutes, you were actually able to trick people. Okay, there's tiered seating. Maybe there's just one level at this venue or whatever. According if you're not familiar, so it looked pretty good.
How did they do ticket wise the first night to the second night though? More, right, for the pay-per-view?
Okay, yeah, they had more for the pay-per-view actually on WrestleTix, which we have here. Had it so for the AMC debut 2830 for Genesis, it was 3,946, which is basically even with Genesis last year.
So 1,000 more tickets for the pay-per-view than for the debut on TV. Wow.
Yeah, and they gave away, though, 880 tickets just to VetTix. So by their other means of distribution, it could have been more than 1,000 tickets distributed. Now, 173 the first night, as we're recording this, it's going on. I don't care. You might be watching it, on the side over there. They lost my interest. But what do you think night 2 is going to do, John?
I would guess 100. That's because I don't think it'll do as much as they debut.
Yeah, I'm the same. So I put a poll. It got some nice 56 votes. 75 to 100K, a little bit more than a third. 100 to 125, about 30%. 125 to 150, 18%, and 150 to 175. Optimistic people, 18% as well. So pretty much everyone leaning for a lower number, but I think it will be maybe a drop above 100 in week 2, and then week 3 we could see it under 100.
Any other pertinent TNA news?
Yeah, so let's run through that. So Albuquerque, they pick things up here. We'll see if there's a VetTix, number from WrestleTix later. But night 1, 1,352 tickets in a venue with 4,763 seats on the map, potentially, although they cut that venue down from a bigger size. And tomorrow, the second day of the tapings, 844 tickets. Now we have the mega on sale, which I think had changed the days. It got bumped a little bit into the future, but just looking at the venues that they're working from, the Pinnacle in Nashville, February 13th and 14th, capacity of about 4,500. It's a new venue, or a newer venue in the city. Atlanta, the GICC Arena, Gateway Center Arena, capacity is potentially around 5,000, could be 3,500 to 5,000, depending on the setup. It's part of the Georgia International Convention Center, and New Orleans at the Ilario Center, which we're pretty familiar with, 2,400 seats. Sometimes potentially could be up to 3,000 or a little bit over 3,000 in this multi-purpose venue. Just one more note about TNA, circling back to their trying to engage influencers and streamers. They're going to be putting out regularly reels that content creators can use snippets and portions of to, talk about TNA programming.
What is going on in their co-branded company, I guess, in some respects? What's going on with NXT?
Yeah, John, before I get into the NXT attendance numbers, I have a question, something I've been thinking about, a theory. Not an Austin theory, but a theory. TNA was kind of positioned as like a cool brand on NXT. A lot of people weren't having the chance to see it. So when TNA comes to town, you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's that cool thing that I noticed on NXT. This talent passed through here at the time, Joe Henry, whatever it may be. Do you think that now having wider exposure for TNA outside of the NXT universe might hurt it if the quality of the shows aren't up to at least NXT expectations.
Definitely. I was actually just talking to somebody about that because I was watching AAA. And if you watch AAA, which they put in the American version, the American broadcasting team on the YouTube channel, and I was like, man, the production value is like off the charts for AAA because it's half owned by WWE. It's like, man, if TNA can't even get to like that level where it's, you would think somewhat comparable with AAA, right? And the production value, that I think that'll definitely hurt it because even somebody mentioned to me, somebody else, it's like, wow, AEW's production value is like way better than TNA's, and I was like, wow, and WWE's is way better than AEW. So it's like interesting to like kind of think of that. It's like you got to definitely step it up. I don't know if it's the camera you're using. Obviously, you got to get a better director in there because he was terrible all night the first night. So they definitely got to step it up production wise.
Yeah, and even from what I've seen with Real American Freestyle, of course they do have veteran wrestling producers there.
Yeah.
I know it's an easier shoot, right? Because mostly you're just focusing on the mat. But that came across better to me. There was something, maybe I was just watching it on cable, maybe on the AMC app, it came across better, but something about it felt like stale and not like sharp picture. But the NXT looking ahead, in terms of their venues booked, there's nothing to write home about, as they say. The numbers are kind of independent level, upper independent level, I guess, today. But NXT Live at the Knoxville Civic Coliseum, 1,220 tickets with a week to go. If it was those numbers regularly, SMW would have had to close up even earlier. So January 30th, The Pinnacle. I knew the name sounded familiar. There's not an open map that I've seen for that. The Boutwell Auditorium. I love that they're, the circuits that they're hitting. That's a pretty big venue, relatively so. 667 tickets, but January 31st. So those aren't far off. February 13th in Kennewick, Washington, 939 tickets. Number of seats on that map, 6,413. WWE Super Show few years ago did 5,755. NXT and Center Stage, 606. That I assume that they'll sell out by showtime.
What's going on with New Japan? New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, so they're starting to release, of course, some more names for the Trenton show. 276 ticket pickup, so 1,461 at the venue. I don't know financially what they need to do for it to be a success, but I think if they're over 2,000 and it's an actual over 2,000 tickets sold, it won't look the best in a venue that large, but I think that'll be a win in today's market. 2,500 or 3,000 will be even better. I wouldn't say a home run, but even better, of course. Now, the G1 Climax, July 11th at Now Arena. No tickets on sale yet, so certainly that will be the most interesting thing to watch in terms of the U.S. market this year, outside of collaborations with AEW.
How about GC Dub, Game Changer?
Yeah, so Game Changer, they got to check off another state on the map for whatever that means. If it keeps, Brett and the team happy, all good. Wichita, there's just looking at, what's upcoming here on the 31st, Philadelphia at Harrah's, Orange Crush, which is the special show on February 1st, GCW Jersey Wrestling Team Up on February 6th and 7th, LA Coldest Winter on February 14th, Mesa, Arizona on the 15th, Louisville on March 6th, Columbus on March 7th, and Chicago on March 8th, outside of the, of course, collective weekend. As we talked about last time, Death Vegas Invitational is far and ahead, relatively so, more successful thus far in terms of pre-sales. Seventh Row Ringside and Beyond is available. What I love about it is that New Japan is kind of reporting tickets available in the same way that I do. But of course, I just have limited information. They're like 6 rows sold, 7th row remains, and so on. So I haven't seen it that much from like a big promotion before. And Joey Janela's Spring Break is the next most popular. We'll of course follow that closely as we get closer. Just notable, the Louisville show, they said it couldn't be done. We'll have certainly a blood focus, Too Tough Tony, Madman Pondo, and surprisingly, they swerved me, bro. Alley Catch is back in GCW, so I think one of their foundational wrestlers, of this modern iteration. So good to see her back, and hopefully there'll be the send off to the Effie feud, although it's not the same when Effie doesn't have the belt, or maybe she'll win it in LA, and then that will be something to talk about.
How about ML Dub?
Yes. So let's see here. So Battle Riot, as of a few days ago, I think actually they're up to 600 something tickets distributed, plus the GA. So I think they'll find a way to fill that by the week's time. Lucha Apocalypto is sold out. Center Stage in March has plenty of tickets left remaining. And John, I had found a scoop here at the time. He was just checking out MLW's Eventbrite, and they had a show that they hadn't yet announced their return to Charleston, of course, with CMLL and New Japan Fantastica Mania show. And John, I was seeing on X, you seemed especially excited about that collaboration once again.
Yes, I'd love it. I love anything CMLL or New Japan. I like MLW, but I mean, I love it. But the only thing interesting is, isn't that the same night as an AEW pay-per-view? Isn't that the Dynasty pay-per-view? So there's no synergy there with CMLL, New Japan, and AEW.
That's a good question. I guess to MLW, New Japan, and CMLL, of course, has some of their biggest stars come through, but with New Japan, it's not always the biggest stars. So maybe you could work around it depending on who has storyline preference. I feel like no one really avoids dates these days. Maybe WrestleMania, but Effie's Big Gay Brunch, I think, corresponds with one of the nights of one of the days, sometime during WrestleMania. I know it's brunch, but it's later. I feel like it's not as much of a thing anymore, but it makes sense from what you're saying in terms of collaborative partners that there's a split there. But I feel like probably with New Japan and CMLL, they probably are running in their home countries anytime they're collaborating with talent anyway, especially CMLL because they run, so much. But interesting to see their return to Charleston because they're making a big deal about being based there. Now, I haven't seen, there might have been people that had jobs that relocated there, job postings that I'm not aware of that were posted in the community, but I haven't seen anything broadly being shared in terms of jobs in Charleston. And I think that was something that was, emphasized when MLW moved.
How about Maple Leaf Pro?
So, in addition to their coordination with ROH, making the news, Fight Nation TV app. John, have you ever heard of this app before the announcement?
No.
So they're in 196 countries worldwide, meaning that you can't download it. You can download the app in 196 countries, basically, but they do air on one station in France. I was trying to figure out what are the other 4 countries that you can't do it. North Korea definitely stands out to me as one, maybe Iran. So I did a comparison of, or actually asked Rock to do a comparison of Fight Nation to DAZN and Triller. So Fight Nation has 100,000 plus registered users. They have 15 million social impressions, 85,000 newsletter subscribers, and they've been talked about in 80 plus media outlets. DAZN has 20 million paid, 300 million regular viewers globally, 12.2 billion minutes watched for the World Cup, 100,000 plus live events. Triller Plus, 7 million fans. Bare Knuckle, 10 billion impressions. Obviously, we know their struggles. So this is all to say, I'm not shading the announcement, but I just want to give perspective, because sometimes when people tweet out like, their excitement and that they made it and it's great for Canada, whatever, this is a very small app. It's important to have that perspective, but certainly wish them well.
What about some weather disruptions? I know obviously we're all expecting bad weather coming up.
Yeah, so the first break on this was Kevin Kleinrock talking about postponing shows in Texas. Ticket sales, in terms of what was reported, we know Lucha tends to be a late buy, but pretty slow at that point. 750 tickets, but obviously a good move to postpone it due to the weather, and it was not an excuse to cancel the events, because both shows went immediately on the books and they're booked for August. So that'll be something. Maybe seeing how tickets were slow leading up to this, maybe there's some more promotional avenues or ways to look at this in the next 7 months that can increase sales in Texas further on in the future. But just to show, the scope of this thus far, and I'm sure places that haven't yet canceled will cancel if the weather turns out. But Metroplex Wrestling in Bedford, Texas, Hot Pro Wrestling in Texas, New South Pro Wrestling in Alabama, Grindhouse Wrestling in Jefferson, Indiana, and even Battle Club Pro in Brooklyn called off their show and postponed it till March due to the expected weather situation.
Whoa. Now, finally, your favorite topic of all time, here and there.
Yeah, John, I was a little bit worried because I didn't have any here and there for a while, because I kept breaking out the promotions that are own categories, but I'm glad to have something. So first thing, it might end up having nothing to do with wrestling, but an interesting update. So Lou DeAngeli, what's he been up to? So he's actually I don't know if the partner is the right word, but one of the founders of this company called Limelight, a specialized sports and entertainment agency. So when we talk about, people that could really drive, that understand wrestling, live events, that are not necessarily connected formally to a pro wrestling company right now, in terms of full time, like Lou DeAngeli is one of two people that I could think about, in addition to Raphael Morphy, who may be doing some consulting work, I think was reported. I think he's also doing some stuff for like sumo wrestling and getting
But
out there.
he also runs the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. So he runs it there. So
I think when I last checked his LinkedIn, that it was listed as the past tense. I'm going to double check that, because of course I don't want to talk about anyone's career, out of turn, but I'm just going to go to what I see here on LinkedIn. So Vice President of Sports Programming, BSC Global, of course, the Barclay, like you mentioned, that lists here on LinkedIn, January 2024 to April 2025.
Oh, damn, I didn't realize that. Okay.
So Signature Moves is his company that he's had, and I think I've been seeing advertising all over the place for this sumo wrestling at the Westchester County Center. I think that is something that he's connected to. And and you know what he has on here? World Championship Sumo and RAF.
Whoa, there you go. Okay.
So that's one thing. The other is more of a traditional here and there story, basically covering a small town paper outlet, an unique underreported story. So this was for the Chronicle. This is in Florida. Small town slam grows into a community tradition in Inverness. What began as a passion project evolved into a growing movement as local pro wrestling continued to draw families, longtime fans, and new audiences to downtown Inverness. Owned by Stephanie and Les Allier, the promotion found a home at the Depot Pavilion, where what was shaping up to be a monthly event quickly became a community favorite. Local pro wrestling debuted in October 2019 in Claremont, selling out its very first show. Encouraged by Stephanie, Les Allier reunited with wrestlers from earlier chapters of his career to bring a one-time idea to life. The enthusiastic response from fans made clear the concept had staying power, and the Inverness crowd reinforced the momentum. Despite cold weather, fans packed the Depot for the latest installment of Small Town Slam. Young fans Kason 4 and KL9 proudly showed off old school wrestling toys. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Between matches, they shared pieces from his nostalgic wrestling toy collection with fans, adding to the family-friendly atmosphere of the night. Inside the ring, the crowd echoed the familiar chant of one fall as competitors battled. All matches on the card were scheduled for one fall, keeping the action brisk and the audience engaged. So a nice little small-time success story. They including people that estimated they had attended more than 60 shows. A highlight of the event was the appearance of Eugene. So love those little small town wrestling stories, keeping wrestling going, especially when there's not as much on the large national or international scale.
All right. Good stuff, Lavie. Good stuff from Ash as well. So let's wrap up this bad boy. Head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie?
Follow me on X at Lavie Marg, LAVIEMARG. Check out my long-form articles on LionCubJobSearch.com. And we're just a few people away from 150 members on the Business of the Business LinkedIn group. So join for updates on the podcast, wrestling news, and wrestling jobs.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See you right back here next week for a little business of the business. See you next week, folks.